Welcome back. It's time for Press Review, where we take a look at what's making headlines today. And joining the discussion is Kevin Osido, the Director of County Governance Watch. Welcome to the show, Kevin. Now, let's start off. We have two editions of The Standard. One is going with the big coast firm, while the other shocking opulence of fake gold suspects. Now, let's start with the story on the big coast firms shifting business to Nairobi, and we are told leading manufacturers, cargo handlers and property investors dump Mombasa port cash shifts to the capital city, worsening economic options. And a lot of the investors, as those who are associate of said investors, have been up in arms with the difference that is going to be brought about by the shift to SGR, or rather the push for that shift. And this is just indicating some of those currents that are coming with the new way of doing things. And we are told here that Mohammed Jaffer, who is arguably one of the biggest employers in Mombasa as a result of his cargo handling operations, and more recently the offloading and packaging of cooking gas, has shifted to the city, and this could cost a lot of people their jobs. What's your take on this?
Yeah, that's quite true. In fact, one of the things that needs to be understood is the place of government policies in terms of not only creating an amicable environment for business to thrive, but putting in place supportive policies that are also able to support not only public sector players, but also private sector. And you note that within the coast there have been a number of strikes and people demonstrating and saying, we want to understand what is this and what this means to us. And especially given that this is coming in the wake of the national celebrations at the coast, where citizens should have been given the opportunity actually to understand the government's plans with regards to all these issues. Because yes, we know that His Excellency the President has a great idea. He has the agenda, the big four agenda items, and manufacturing is one of those very key agenda items. And so it needs really to be broken down to citizens so that they are able to understand what are these drivers that are supposed to push the economy in such mega cities like Nairobi, Mombasa, and even Kisumu and other upcoming urban areas. And so it is important, therefore, in my view, that softer and safer grounds for joint conversations need to be put in place. And I am looking forward to seeing how the Mombasa City County is going to be able to respond to some of these needs. But much more fundamentally is now there is therefore the call for networks for business sector players, and particularly institutions like KEPSA, the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, Kenya Association of Manufacturers, among several others, because the county governments, basically the constitution is supported by various legislations, which also include the Urban Areas and Cities Act, which also give the citizens the power to be able to organize themselves locally and influence decisions on what issues affect them directly. And so this is really one of those areas for which such kind of supportive legislations in the constitution should be given that test. But I think finally, in my view, the Ministry of Industrialization also needs to come out to spell its policies to citizens so that it is clearly understood, because I don't think that for such a time as this, it would be fit for government to pride itself in pushing an agenda which citizens cannot be able to not only feel, but also touch. And I think this is a test on how government wants to ensure that it safeguards an environment where citizens can be able to peacefully and effectively do a business, which is supposed to also add value to the gross domestic product of the country.
I mean, at least immediately, because as the government pushes for this, for the new way of things and a new way of transporting cargo from the coast to the mainland and other countries, there are things that, these are shifts that will affect the mwananchi, like the example that is being given, the loss of jobs. Is it a failure in terms of planning because they did not foresee that there's going to be a difference in terms of, that would affect the locals as they aim to improve the economy?
That would be attributed to a failure for two things. One is, of course, that planning, but two is stakeholder engagement. Because I think, in my view, it would be quite unfortunate to have this kind of very important news coming out only when people are demonstrating against what government perceives to be as positive towards its own, towards achieving its own agenda. And so what that means, in my view, is that the Ministry of planning and coordination of national government, and particularly even Treasury itself, needs to therefore expand its scope in terms of how it engages primary and secondary stakeholders. And primary here is, for example, the story that you are quoting, where businesses are now closing down and people are looking for opportunities in Nairobi. And doing business in Nairobi is not as cheap as we might probably see it, you know, on a day-to-day running, or as you rightfully said, imagine. And so what that means is that the government, through planning, Minister of Planning, therefore, needs to come out and effectively expand the opportunities for people to not only scrutinize what government is doing, but get involved at the very onset stages, which I think has not been the case. And quite unfortunate is that the story of this SGR is one which I think is here to stay, and especially because we are expanding this all the way now to Narok areas and the second phase of SGR. And people are still asking very important questions, including the president's promise to share papers and agreements around the country's agreement to enjoin itself on the SGR agreement with China. And unfortunately, it's of course people asking these questions, and we are seeing emerging issues like what we are now talking about. Unfortunately, government is not taking the responsibility to be responsive enough and to respond to some of these questions, which I think, in my view, one day will really fall back very heavily on the government. So the recommendation, therefore, in my view, is that expand the scope for public engagement, let people talk about these issues, and the local businesses.
Not just talk, they must listen in view of meeting those needs. Not putting a stop to the projects, but figuring out solutions surrounding.
Yes, and that's what I was just about to say, that the local businesses now need to begin, not just begin, but to continue to organize effectively, even to monitor the recommendations and proposals that have been put forward by national government and other stakeholders. And if they are not effective in their view, then we need to see stringent measures. For example, petitions that are submitted to court to stop some of these processes, so that we see a scenario where government is also responding to the needs of the citizens, because government really, in terms of business, is supposed to create that environment. It's supposed to ensure that there are policies, legal frameworks that support that also support the ease of doing business. But when government now comes to make it very difficult, then the question that would beg is, why is it so? And so what can we do about it?
And you know, one of the selling points for that railway was that it would revitalize and make businesses along its path, you know, come alive. But clearly at the port itself, things are shifting in the other direction. So clearly, while the system, the intention was good, there must be need for the locals to be considered and solutions that work for them be implemented, or rather even just talked about, and, you know, at the very least, because we've been witnessing weekly protests.
I think this is a mega government investment that it would be very unfortunate if Kenyans are left out, and especially when you're talking about the era of leaving no one behind. And if government is depending on Kenyans to be able to also drive its agenda for economic growth and to support the president's Big Four, particularly on manufacturing, then we need to see supportive measures which are also going to guarantee that the spaces for citizens are also protected, and that people really don't need to demonstrate for their voices to be heard. Yes, it is their constitutional right, it is their space, but I think that government needs to be adaptive enough to the changing environment, where then if it is about SGR and people are talking about issues, let action be taken, and beyond the demonstrations, let's do petitions and send them to a court of law.
Now, let's take a look at page 2 of the Standard. You're told about the chaos that ensued at the Nairobi County government. Chaos as MCAs clash over a fresh bid to kick out Elachi, and that is the speaker that has been under siege. We are told that the anarchy rocked the Nairobi County Assembly once again yesterday in the wake of a fresh attempt to impeach Speaker Beatrice Elachi. And then pictured right there is the drama that you're being told about in the headline, and the chaotic scenes after members of parliament supporting Beatrice clashed with those supporting Majority Leader Abdi Guyo at City Hall yesterday. This seems to be a never-ending dramatic, deadlock between the two camps. What's your take on this when you see these honorable MCAs trading blows and shoving and having scuffles every other week just over who will be Speaker of the Nairobi County Assembly.
Trix, this is very unfortunate because I think maybe since April last year we've been talking about this single issue. And the unfortunate bit of it is that history is not going to judge these quote-unquote honorable members on the virtue of, on the premise of how much energy they emitted on each other and their attacks and all these factions. History is going to look at how many number of laws, legislations did they put in place to ensure that the people who elected them and the parties that nominated them to the county assembly were effectively protected, and that the role for which they are put in place have been exercised, which include representation. So we'll be looking at the number of laws and the policy environments that they have been able to monitor. Number two is the degree of oversight that they have been able to exercise on the county government, and you and I will agree, and our fellow viewers, that they have not been able to do very well, because up to now we do not have a deputy governor for Nairobi City County and several other issues within the cabinet of the city county government. And so people would be interested in looking at beyond the wars and the fights, because politicians would want to look at a scenario where you know, they use their physical strengths as opposed to what we cannot see, which is their brains. And so my challenge to these good friends of mine, I can see some of my friends whose photos appear here, is that really beyond this was, let's look at the place of dialogue and how we can be able to set a good example for other county assemblies, because what's happening in Nairobi is not just unique to Nairobi. Many other county assemblies are struggling with very many different issues, but they have found a very effective way of dealing with their challenges, which range from passage of budgets to passage of even CIDPs to annual development plans to supplementary budgets, all the way even to how different service delivery measures are being passed at the county governments. And so in my view, the lawmakers for Nairobi City County Assembly really need to retreat. And I thought we had dealt with this issue 2 weeks ago, because when Mheshimiwa Elachi went back to the seat,
final,
that should have been, in my view, an opportunity for them to now come and ask themselves, how much time have we lost
on this?
And especially because the friends of mine like Mheshimiwa Chege Mwaura, who are sitting in for the space, should now be able to also read, in my view, the Riots Act for whichever faction he is part of. The majority leader, Mheshimiwa Guyo, also need to come back to the fore and begin to ask the question, what is my interest in this issue? And I think that even the party for which the elected members come from, which is Jubilee, now need to also exercise its internal disciplinary measures to ensure that the people who represent the party at the county assembly, that really they exercise the tools of governance within their party and call these people to order and really deal with this issue. Because my biggest concern is the state of county governance within Nairobi City County and the state of service delivery. You walk outside here and look at the degree of trash. So sanitation issues is a function of the county government. People in Nairobi are still talking about water. Your studio, your station did a very commendable job on water and sanitation in Nairobi County. And especially this week when we are also commemorating the sanitation week at the KICC. So the question around what this means to the members of Nairobi City County Assembly, really, they need to wake up from their sleeping beds and walk with Kenyans and just see what people are going through. And that, in my view, needs to give them an opportunity to reflect on what they need to do and what their responsibility as elected leaders is.
Very, very, very wise words there. But
whether taken or not is another story.
That's another story. Now let's take a look at another story that has been making headlines since yesterday, or well, for the past few days, because we had the KCPE students preparing, and we had all this talk about floods and how they would affect the process, then cheating and all the areas that are being the measures are put in place to ensure that there is none of that. And this is a big story on the Daily Nation. We are told a catalogue of chaos, registration, shock-up, birth, and delays on day one. And these delays for some, for example, those in Turkana, have to do with some of the flash floods that they have been experiencing owing to the rainy season that is going on. But obviously, there's the cheating issue, and we are told that National Exam Stops Cabinet meeting as the state pulls all stops to prevent cheating. Now, we did hear yesterday the various CSs in various areas. We had CS George Magoha in Mombasa. We had CS for Interior in Gilgil. Just keeping a close eye on the process and the opening of the cargo, and just, you know, having a hands-on approach to the whole process in a bid to help that in the curbing of, you know, cheating. Now, pictured on the top page, we have Onyinkwa Dennis, a very inspiring picture right there, showing us that we should be limitless, as Eliud Kipchoge told us, because he's writing or taking the paper with his feet. And it's quite, I think, beautiful, the determination that is shown there. And if you look inside, there's more pictures of the process, but obviously there are issues surrounding it as well.
Yeah. In my view, one, it's commendable that cabinet secretaries went out there to be able to, you know, show, to provide a show of confidence to these young ones, our brothers and sisters and our children.
Yes. And
to just let them know that all is well. I think a lot of investment has been put in place to ensure that these exams, both for the KCPE and even the KCSE ones, go very well. Beyond this, I think two things come to my mind. One is the state of preparedness, and for a number of schools, there was a directory that parents should not visit schools even for the normal prayer days that we have been able, that we are used to, where we are invited back to schools. At least we have a video of the CS for Interior praying for some children and in Gilgil. But I think for me, the bigger question is, and maybe before this is also to say that the CS for Education today was very instrumental in the former examination era, because at that time I think he was the chair of the task force on education and examinations and working very closely with the Ministry of Education. So two things. One is the lessons that we've been able to learn from that very initial process, where I think almost less than 10% of cheating was recorded. And so we'll be looking forward to seeing how this particular one has gone down. And then number two is cross-cutting issues. We are seeing a scenario where there has been a number of suicidal deaths that have been committed by kids, you know, children who are in primary schools, not to mention universities and other tertiary learning institutions of learning. So the question then that begs is, are we prepared to deal with other issues beyond exams? Because this in my view is an event. By the end of this week, we won't be seeing these nice photos. We won't be talking about the examinations. We'll have moved on to something else, maybe BBI or KCSE or something else, or maybe Jared Otieno, these people are walking around with fake gold. Something else will come up tricks. But then the lives of these young ones is something that must be secured. And so issues about why depression, whether it's depression or other factors that are making them commit suicide. Number two is issues to do with early pregnancies. You note that, again, your paper, The Standard, carried towards the end of about 2 months ago, a total number of many young kids in primary schools who had very, who are reported to be pregnant either by their teachers or boda riders or whoever was responsible. And so in my view, I think that even as we talk about education reforms and following a very successful event for the education curriculum at KICC presided over by the president, to now this very wonderful event that is taking place, we need also to move forward and talk about other cross-cutting issues which may not be exam related, but really affect the life after we sit for our exams and how we become the total human beings within our society, including even how we receive our examination results, both as parents and also as guardians and people who pay for their school fees. And again, tricks, because we are talking about a situation where it's about CBC, curriculum-based competency, and we are saying that nobody will not go to Form 1, that everyone who sits their KCP exams today whether you score 5 marks or you score 10 marks, it's really about your competency.
Yes.
So what does that really mean to the kids whose lifestyle and whose orientation has been that the exams is really what it is?
Yes.
And in many meetings I have gone to, even at the county levels, where you are invited to just come and share your stories and as you talk and motivate the children, is about the number of marks that you score.
Right.
So I think we also need to demystify CBC against the expectation that the marks that you will be able to score at the examination level determines who you become.
Sure. And I'm glad you brought that up, the issue about teen pregnancies. And this is a picture that has been painted by the Standard on page 4, where we can see a candidate from Ogenya Primary School sitting for her KCPE exam as her newborn takes a rest at the Ahero Sub-County Hospital in Kisumu yesterday. You cannot, you cannot compete with that picture in terms of making it clear that something needs to be done about teen pregnancies. And I'll just leave it at that. The story has been covered largely across board. All the papers are giving us the latest on the taking of the KCPE exams. Now that you brought it up, on page 4, fake gold suspect lives on the fast lane, and this is a state wants to seize the 2018 Bentley Contingent DT alongside a custom-made Porsche Panamera of 2015 worth 30 million, arguing they are proceeds of crime. And this has to do with the shocking opulence, as it is being termed, of 300 million shillings fake gold suspect, who has been named here as Jared Otieno. Now, what's your take on this one? Tell us more.
This is, I probably have nothing to talk about, especially with regards to this. But I think on a wider scale, this is not new, because in 2015, I think this is the same gentleman who went to Meru to pay his dowry in a very flamboyant manner, in a manner in which, looking at one, not to say that young people like you and I cannot make money, but the degree of money that you make, depending on how old you are at that particular point in time.
And by Kenyan standards.
And by Kenyan standards. And number two is, it's not normal that you are going to pay your dowry and a host of this amount of politicians are following you and they are part of your process.
Unless they are following the money.
Unless you're very good friends and that they really have a good reason for why they are doing that. But then the shocking thing, in fact, I was shocked last night when I saw this on some social media post, when somebody was making a comparison. So you tell us you're this rich, you're going to, this very interesting ceremony in Meru. And then today we are talking about you as a fake gold digger.
Yeah.
I think this presents a number of issues which also relate to how our institutions of integrity are managed and execute their functions, which include the DPP, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, DCI, for the sake of criminal investigations, and of course EACC for the case of ethics and anti-corruption. And much more fundamentally is the place for which institution segments like fake gold fall in. And I think one of the things that needs to be given to Kenyans, in my view, is the space for feedback. That when we do our investigations, when we execute certain issues like this one, let Kenyans know the state of that particular investigation or the state of that particular issue. Because if it was reported in 2015, and today is 2019, 4 years down the line, this gentleman should have undergone through a lot of camouflagic stages, which then begs the question, what kind of society are we living in? And the beauty of it, Trix, is that you will not be able to have this kind of a car on the streets of Nairobi without people like Kevin Osido taking a photo of it and sharing it with some friends and saying, by the way, when I grow up, I want to have a car like this.
To own this.
Who owns this kind of car? And then very good people.
Not to say that we cannot get rich in Kenya. It's just that there's a lot of, red flags have been pointed out.
Which is what I'm saying, that when people send it to KRA and they dig out who owns the number plate, because that's what everybody does. Many times I have seen my friends stopped by flying squad officials, and they are flagged down and they stop and they are asked, can you give us your car registration details? We have issues with this car, and they verify, and within 10 minutes, you prove that it belongs to you and you go away. But that's what we are saying, that we should be able, if when flagged down with this kind of cars, and I agree with you not to say that you and I and several other young people cannot own these cars, but we should be able to do what many times, and those of us who are in governance and leadership have been asking for, a lifestyle audit, and that you are able to account for every coin, for every shilling, for every note that you have within yourself, and that you're also able to count for every pair of shoe and every belt and every earring and bangles that we have on our hands. Because otherwise, I think we have just been talking about education. And if we are going to propel this kind of stories, then even the space for education, the space for values, the space for ethics in our society will fast fade away, and people will be doing everything possible to be as rich as this gentleman without necessarily going through God's plan for our lives to be this rich.
Okay, and now that is a story that if you want to know more, you need to read the Standard. It has even broken down some of the opulent features of this particular automobile, and they go into the millions. And then we have, just a reminder, this is a man who has been accused or is facing the accusation of having duped a foreign government in a scam of selling fake gold. So you need to read that story, and obviously that bit about his extravagant Rorasho, if you may, is still being covered right here on page 3. So very deep coverage of his opulence as well as his lifestyle. Now let's take a short break. As we told you earlier on, today we are teaming up with Vibes Radio to discuss the what is it called, Punguza Mizigo initiative, as well as the report on the BBI that is being awaited upon. So do not go too far. We'll have more for you right here on Morning Express.
This is KTN News.
Fast-paced world where everybody needs to keep up, the Standard Digital e-paper will keep you ahead of the pack. Welcome to the Standard Digital e-paper platform that offers you an all-in-one access to all daily reads, weekly and monthly pullouts and newspapers, so you will never miss a moment. Get tailor-made packages for daily, weekly, monthly or yearly subscriptions for individual readers, corporate or learning institutions at unbelievable discounts. Now that's great news. So simply download the Standard Digital e-paper app from Google Play Store or Apple Store, or visit newsstand.standardmedia.co.ke and subscribe now. It's more than just news. It's your news just the way you like it. A tap away. Standard Digital e-paper.
Just how you like it.
Warm greetings from the skies aboard KQ003, the flight from New York to Nairobi.
It's been an excellent experience. It's quite a lot to learn, a lot of exposure, a lot of new experiences.
When you leave JFK, you arrive in Nairobi in the morning, you go to work, you go to church.
I'm saving a whole day, which makes me a lot more productive.
The flight is good, but they should improve on communication and customer service.
The milestones, the challenges, the way forward.
It's the best initiative we had. It's good for business.
We said in 12 months we start to break even. Well, actually, we broke even in 8 months.
All of those flights have happened without incident. They have been safe and they have been secure.
KQ Nairobi, New York, 1 year on, produced by Chams Media for KTN News Channel this Thursday at 8:30 p.m.
Join American, Kenyan, and East African business executives, investors, senior government officials, and multilateral stakeholders at the annual AmCham Business Summit taking place in Nairobi, Kenya on November 4th to 5th, 2019. Featuring 6 sectors of focus: agribusiness, technology and digital economy, health, infrastructure, energy and manufacturing, the summit presents a great opportunity for high-level business networking, gain market intelligence, drive policy interventions, enhance thought leadership, and explore partnerships with both public and private sector players across the region. Don't miss out. Register at www.amchambizsummit.com today. The AmCham Biz Summit, partnering for prosperity.
This is KTN News.
Now, the BBI report as well as the Punguza Mizigo initiative is going to be the topic that we will be discussing today with the Vibes crew, that is Vibes Radio. And in the spirit of convergent, Mike has scuttled over to their studio so that we can have that discussion. That will be the newsroom edition today. So let's cross over and be a part of that conversation.
Fish.
Yeah.
And it is cheaper than fish from Kisumu.
But it really tastes bad.
And
It's bad. It's horrible.
So there's really no rationale in it. I'll give you my personal experience. I went to Luangni Beach at one point, and I was like, you know what? Let me sit here and enjoy the sunset on Lake Victoria and enjoy some fish. And I asked for, just a sizable
tilapia.
fish. I mean, looking at my size, you can tell the kind of fish I was looking for. Tilapia.
Yes.
And I was shocked because it was, I think when I was given the bill, it was 1,200 and something. And I'm like, wait, I'm right where the fish comes from.
Yes.
No,
I'm paying 1,000 shillings for fish. How? Chinese fish is like, what, 300?
Yes.
For the same size.
And that's the crazy part. So also another thing, of course, is, so we've talked manufacturing, we've talked health coverage, we've talked housing, and we've talked food and nutrition. So clearly, the Big Four agenda isn't going according to plan.
Yes.
And so then, of course, one of the biggest issues is how much we spend as a country in the budget. So this year, we were at 36.8 billion. 50% going to silos. Yeah?
Recurrent expenditure.
Recurrent expenditure. It's crazy. I did a bit of commerce in school. And the first thing you're told, don't spend 50% on recurrent expenditures.
As in, don't even go to commerce, one box. Just your own salary.
Yeah.
If you're spending more than 50% on recurrent, rent, electricity, your Wi-Fi, happy Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you're definitely heading to poverty. There's an uncle of mine who told me if you're spending more than actually 30% of your salary on recurrent expenditure, you will remain poor.
But
now, if we can do that on a home level, why can't a government?
Yep.
But even the saddest thing is that even these guys who we are bringing in, kina MCAs, kina senators, kina MPs, most of them, when you look at the details hapo ndani, most of them are doing double jobs. Most of them, mtu afanya hii kidogo, then mwingine anakamkumbus kidogo. But even in real sense, most of them are barely doing anything.
Like, what does a deputy governor do? These are the questions we ask. Then, as we were thinking and asking these questions, the Third Way Alliance of Kenya, led by Ekuru Court, brought the Punguza Mzigo. Now, this is Punda Mechoka. So, this is what they were proposing. They're saying they want to reduce the cost of running a parliament, bring back the budget from 36.8 billion to 5 billion.
Okay.
I don't know. Like that for me is already like, yes,
Yeah.
I'm
Sounds like a good
in.
plan.
I'm in. And then, of course, overrepresentation, where we have 416 MPs, we could reduce that to 147. 47 counties, single constituency units, with parliamentary elections, abolish nominations in county assemblies, just basically breaking it down. And one of the major ones is like every Kenyan at the age of 18 acquires a national identity card, which will also be deemed as a registered voter.
Okay.
Makes so much
Yeah,
sense
makes
because we
sense,
spend a
makes
lot of
sense.
money on this.
Yeah.
And corruption and theft of public resources, no presidential pardon or amnesty will be applicable for such cases. And basically, if you're found wasting public resources, you're supposed to pay a maximum of 500K. I mean, it's very interesting. And if you follow the thirdwayalliance.com, you can get to see everything there. Now, my question is, this guy went to all 47 county assemblies and they shut it down. Why? Why do you think?
Well, there's several things. Number one is the political aspect of it. And allow me to handle that, then maybe you guys, we can look at other things.
Yeah.
But number one is the fact that Ekuru Court sort of got everybody off guard.
Yeah.
Particularly the political bigwigs. Then he did not involve them.
Yeah.
So already kulikuwa hapo na ile story ana feel yenyewe hapo umefanya hiki kitu peke yako. So they termed him arrogant, self-centered, blah 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 blah. So they shot it down, not because initially it was not a good idea, but the fact that politically speaking he did not whip up support.
But where were Kenyans where were we in this story? Because as soon as you tell me that we can reduce the budget from 36.8 billion to 5 billion, I'm in. I don't even want to hear the rest of it. So Kenyans, I'm just going to ask you to call us right now, 0719012700. Is it that mulikuwa wapi sale ipunguza mzigo ilikuwa inapelekwa?
I think because there are other people who are out there making cash, because I can see that he wanted to reduce ward reps from current 85 to 17.
Yeah.
So he's created more unemployment. Yes, so guys felt that he's going to be attacking them na watalose jobs out. So they would rather stay in a government whereby they're earning something. Even if they're not doing anything, they're earning something. So they would rather stay in a government that budget iko inflated versus wakae huko nje jobless.
I mean, the crazy part, I think the one of the biggest problems with Punguza Mzigo is it's like now your boss coming to you and tell you, now we want to fire a couple of people.
Yes.
Vote for whether we should fire some people.
Yes.
Of course, you're going to say no.
Yes.
But Kenyans, where were we in this story? Did you care? Call us up 0719012700 and toa opinion yako. Hello, Mojo.
Yo, mambo.
Fiti sana. Good morning.
Poa sana. Mi story yangu ni ya food.
Okay.
I think president anafaelewe.
Hello?
Maendeleo ni chakula. Maendeleo CSGR, sio JKIA Express ya billions ngapi. Naunga tunanunua 200. Kwanza shughulikie chakula, kila kitu, then barabara zitajileta.
All right. Thank you so much. That's Mojo just pointing out we need to focus on priorities. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, who are we speaking to?
Speaking to Riverton, Bernard.
Tafadhali zima radio ama your TV, we can hear the feedback. All right. Call us up 0719012700 kama unataka kutoa maoni yako. What would you like to address the president this morning? We, of course, have brought Punguza Mzigo. We've brought for you the Big Four agenda, where we are right now. And it's up to you now.
Yeah, and really, he's the CEO, Chief Executive Officer of the country. And we expect from the CEO atatupatia maoni.
Mike Shire, good morning.
Morning.
How are you doing?
I'm fine and okay. I want to address Mr. President.
Yes.
Why is there runaway corruption in Kenya? Number one. Number two, why are our MPs passing laws with besides public outcry? Number three, where are the stadiums that he has promised? Why was sports not incled in the Big Four agenda? Yeah.
All right.
Finally, why is the president appointing old people in cabinet posts whereas they are new faces?
All right. Thank you so much.
Educated people. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that one. So he just points out real quick, but I'm going to... there's one he said about why are we hiring
Old people.
No, why are we building stadiums? There's someone else who raised that point. Did we need to spend that amount of money on stadiums? Has the money been spent?
All right.
Ephantus?
Hello?
Hi, Ephantus. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
We're great.
Now I have two points to make. One is on this Punguza Mzigo. I think Kuno made a big mistake not involving the MCAs actually, who are meant to validate the Punguza Mzigo so that it moves to the next level. Because you cannot say that you are going to reduce the number of MCAs and you expect them to pass that to go through.
But
otherwise, the whole idea was a brilliant idea, but then the people who are involved on the ground did not see the need, because actually they were the ones who were that it was the targeted group to be removed out.
Ephantus, have you read the what Ekuru Court was proposing, the Punguza Mzigo?
Partially, I've read it.
And does it make sense to you?
It does make a lot of sense actually. If that Punguza Mzigo goes direct to Wanjiko for voting, actually it would carry the day.
All right, thank you so much, Ephantus. He raises an interesting point.
And that might be where he made a mistake, because according to the Constitution, there's supposed to be public participation.
Yeah.
That's where he probably went wrong, because there was not much of public participation. However, the representatives that we have, MCAs, members of the county assembly, are the ones who are supposed to see this for us. But like you mentioned, and like he has brought it up, you cannot ask the question, we need to fire guys. So can you guys vote as to whether we're going to fire people? Of course, if we're the ones being asked to vote, we'll be like, no.
But also, Michael, that brings a very interesting point. Wanjiko has voted for these representatives to go and represent them. Why does it have to skip them to come to us? Then why do I need you?
Yes,
why do I need you?
Precisely.
Call us up 0719012700. Hello.
Hello, how you doing?
We're good. Who are we speaking to?
Oh, yeah, my name is Chief. I'm calling from the United States.
All right.
Okay.
Yes, I could want just to mention something so brief. I could just say, let the judiciary lock up this peace that we have, the impunity. Let the judiciary lock up the thieves. Then things will work out fine. People have stolen money. They have gone to benchmarking. They come back, they steal money, they go out to other countries, they go see what other people are doing, but there is nothing, even whatever that the other colleague, your colleague has just said there. Why can somebody be voting when he has registered with an ID? In the U.S., when you go even to the post office to go change the driver's license or to go pick a mail, you are just asked, are you a voter? Can we register you? And it takes like 2 minutes to register somebody for voting.
Yeah.
Now in the U.S., you have an exercise of which takes, whole billion of money. And these people, they started coming to the U.S., England, UK, benchmarking and seeing how people are doing things over there.
Yeah. All right.
They don't come and implement. They don't come and implement some of these things, please.
All right. Thank you so much. And he raised a very interesting point. All these benchmarking trips, is anything ever implemented?
No, actually, those benchmarking trips are about per diem.
That's it.
It's not about implementation.
Absolutely.
Even during the Olympics, they actually went for benchmarking and
and
is there any stadium? Have any of our even volleyball players, have they ever been kitted because of benchmarking and seen, by the way, these guys have kits?
Ian from Mombasa, good morning.
Good morning, Sheila. How are you guys?
We are great.
Okay, so I just want to make a comment on this Punguza Mzigo. I think the biggest enemy to Punguza Mzigo are the MCAs. And the second biggest enemy to Punguza Mzigo are going to be the MPs. You know why?
Yep.
This Punguza Mzigo attempts, first of all, to reduce the number, to scrap the number of MCAs completely. And then the same Punguza Mzigo attempts to stop public wastage of public money and capping salaries of elected leaders, right? So these are the people who we went to so that they can help us reduce corruption and all that. And they're the same people who are perpetuating all these public fund theft and all that stuff. So I think there was public participation in that. The Kuro Court already collected millions of signatures from Kenyans. But at the same time, MCAs through their own political, I guess, selfishness or something.
Yeah.
They decided just to shoot down the whole thing.
It's true. All right. Thank you so much, Ian. Ian there from Mombasa raising a very interesting point, which I think we have also... He did get 1 million Kenyan signatures. But you remember we're, 50 million? I'm just saying.
Yeah, and lest we lose the plot, let's go back to the Big Four agenda. The question is, this is what the president used to campaign.
Yeah.
This is what he used as bait. If we do an analysis or an audit of where we are with that Big Four today, unfortunately, food security, hamna, we are hungry. UHC, bado hakuna mahospitali zinafanya kazi. Affordable housing, that's a story for another day. Manufacturing. Guys are losing jobs. So, Mr. President, where are we on those?
Yep. Call us up 0719-012-700. We want to hear from you. How do you want to address the president, especially when it comes to the Big Four agenda? We have, of course, broken it down. As it stands this year, our budget was at 36.8 billion. And what we have is... it's inflated, guys. It's too big. We can't handle it as a country.
Why it's inflated? Well, those that equipment that we're talking about that's taken to hospitals for 38 billion that doesn't work.
Yeah.
You have
stalled projects.
Benchmarking, where we had how many MPs went the other day to the US? I think like 35 of them. Let's just say a lot was spent. And that's why our budget has hit sky roof, and it's there's nothing that's seen on the ground.
Currently, in the newspaper, the president has been out of the country. He's traveled 38 times just this year. All right,
have you seen the jet?
Yeah, we've seen that. Hi, who are we speaking to?
Priscilla, and my issue would be,
Mm-hmm.
you watched something that was aired by NTV on Sunday and Monday about cancer country.
Yes.
Yeah, it is a big issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope Mr. President would really give this as a first priority as well as food. It is really, really an issue, and Kenyans are really suffering.
But Priscilla, just to ask her, this is actually part of the president's Big Four agenda. So, and money has been spent, like we just told you, 38 billion was spent in the Ministry of Health, to equip hospitals, but the equipment is not working.
So what do we do?
That's what we're asking. Thank you so much for calling, Priscilla. Kamal from Eldoret, good morning.
Hello.
Habari.
Salama sana.
Haya, changia story yetu leo.
Ni Jeremiah Bungoma Kimilili. Umpata Laudia nikilia, nilikuwa nataka kumkotea tu.
Kutugotea
tu.
Kotea tu.
Okay, asante sana. All right.
One box.
Yes.
At least the judiciary is having budget cuts. At least.
No, but it was halted.
It's been suspended.
It was suspended.
It's been suspended.
At least they are showing
that
initiative.
Is the wrong budget cut, because a country that cannot, have their justice system work means we're in danger. As in Nikubaya.
Imagine
they should look for other means.
No, judiciary should not cut that budget, because at the end of the day, how many cases are sitting there? Look, we live in a country where a lot of people have been suspected of graft. Name one person who's been arrested, who's actually in prison. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, tunaongea na nani?
Tunaongea na Wanjala Omoto kutoka Kilifi.
Yes. Changia story yetu, wataka kumwambia president nini?
Mimi nataka kumwambia president kitu kimoja muhimu sana, na ningependa mnipe nafasi mzuri mimi pia niweze kuzungumza. Nimetafuta nafasi hii kwa siku nyingi.
Zungumza.
Mimi ningeomba rais wetu awe makini sana na nchi yetu, because nchi yetu tukufu saa hii tunaona matatizo mengi sana, na haya matatizo yanatokana kwa sababu yeye yaonekana naongoza lakini hana power zozote. Sisi tungependa tumalize ufisadi, umalizwe, na hiyo njia ambayo inatumika si njia nzuri, kwa sababu sisi wote ni Wakenya, na vile msemo unasema kwamba aliyepata kapata. Kitu kizuri ingekuwa saa hii serikali ama wabunge wakae chini wapitishe sheria Wale waliopata pesa ni bahati yao walipata. Waweke sheria kuanzia saa hii ya kwamba kuanzia saa hii kuendelea mbele, mtu yoyote atakayepatikana ameiba pesa za serikali achukuliwe hatua kali. Lakini hii mambo ya kutumia pesa tena kutafuta pesa ambazo hazitapatikana itakuwa ni hasara. Tunachitia hasara tu. Sasa ingekuwa vizuri tuweke sheria so that from now kuendelea mbele mtu akipatikana ameiba pesa so that tuanze Kenya mpya.
All right. Thank you so much, Wanjala. Wanjala there from Kilifi. And he raises an interesting point. I just want to also tell Wanjala, in the Punguza Mzigo, the Kuru Court was saying that corruption and theft of public resources cases be tried within 30 days and all appeals to be exhaustively concluded within 15 days. And then he also says, impose a life sentence for culprits convicted of corruption and theft of public funds. No presidential pardon and amnesty will be applicable for these cases. Where were Kenyans? Where were Kenyans when this was going around? Silas, good morning. Hello, hello.
Hello, mambo.
Fiti sana.
Habari yenu.
Tuko salama. Wataka kumwambia president nini leo asubuhi?
Mine is to focus on, the president has given us SGR. That is something that will attract investors. But when it comes to, an investor cannot invest where money losses each and every day. He is not doing enough to just attract those investors because pesa zimepotea na hakuna kitu imefanywa. Can you invest where nini pesa inapotea kila siku?
Okay.
Definitely you can't. You can't invest where you are getting losses. So investors watakuja kama tutafunika hizo loopholes zenye pesa zinapotea kila time. Just recently I had 800 billion zilipotea sijui kwa ministry fulani. And nobody is talking about it.
All right. Thank you so much, Silas. Silas, of course, bringing up the case of corruption. There's so many corruption cases, man.
Yes.
I mean, in terms of... me, sometimes I wonder, how much money do we have as a country? How are we not a first world country?
We're actually very rich. I mean, if you look at Goldenberg, lots of money was lost. Now, if we look at the amounts that we talk about, just this morning, I've seen a gentleman, if that article is anything to go by, who's got 2 cars that cost 87 million.
Yes, man.
As in, to
I broke that story down. I broke that story down.
I'm sure there are even rich people, millionaires in the States, millionaire in dollars, who are looking at that and thinking,
wow, I know, right?
This is a big spender. So money as a country we have. 2 things that really, really bring us down. One is corruption. Because that money, first of all, I normally say, if you're going to be corrupt and you're going to steal money from the government, sawa, iba, lakini jenga industry. Upatie vijana kazi. Lakini sasa ukiiba uende ununue manyumba huko abroad. Number 2 is wastage. What we're talking about, all
right, we got Jimmy from Duberry. I'm just going to hold your thought there. Jimmy, good morning.
Good morning to you. How are you doing, guys?
We are great. So what do you want to address the president today?
Mr. President, your Big 4 agenda it's falling. It has come. When you touch on the affordable health care, you cannot have an affordable health care when you don't have a preventive health care. It's going to be expensive, more expensive, the curative health care. Talk about the affordable housing. Affordable housing, I've never seen any of the ministers going to break the grounds. Neither the president. Talk about the food security. What is he doing about the food security? Food security now, there's long range. I heard one of the governors saying on TV, that was by Sophia Wanuna, that is Checkpoint. The governor said he has no capacity to collect the waters. The rainwater.
Yeah.
What that tells you,
Yeah.
It's a big scam.
It's a big scam.
Talk about the BBI. The BBI now it's talking of inclusivity. It's talking of uniting the country.
Yeah.
But it's zero. It's dividing the country more. So, and as a reader, I would have expected him to call Akuru Okot, bring his ideas, bring his Punguza Mzigo ideas, and that of BBI, see what they can remove from the BBI and add on the Punguza Mzigo or vice versa.
Okay.
That didn't happen. that's a leader. That's how a leader should do.
Right.
It's not just blackwashing Kuro's Court, Punguza Mzigo, and
All right, thank you so much, Jimmy. That's Jimmy from Dewberry, and he says Dubes. He's from Dubes, yeah.
Now, he's made me think about something, and we used the word scam.
Yeah.
Have we thought about it in the sense that this big four that we talk about actually, first of all, has never started, was never meant to start, will never start. So really, we're discussing something that maybe was non-existent right from the beginning. Maybe it was just a cash cow.
Yeah.
It was a way to make money.
Yeah, but also, every leader, when they get in, I mean, you have to say the right things. Look, I saw the campaign in Kibra, which is right now the biggest by-election. I don't know what gold is in Kibra. Uko, I think kuna gold or some oil there that we don't know about. Because I heard the deputy president when he was campaigning for, which is interesting, the deputy president campaigning for, an MP, in
Kibra.
In Kibra, and he said, if you vote for Mariga, he will bring you hospitals. He will bring you roads. He's the only one who can create, and he's going to build schools here. And so it got me thinking. I was like, is Kibra like a new constituency, or has he just shown up?
And what stops you from doing that now?
Yeah.
I mean, why do you have to wait for McDonald to be voted in for you to do that?
And that's what I'm saying. Like, this is the deputy president here telling Kibra residents, vote for this guy, and then you'll start to see hospitals. He was part of the Jubilee government that was pitching to us this big four agenda that had housing, that had medicine, affordable healthcare.
Stadiums.
That had jobs, that had stadiums. So now you're bringing an MP to, come on.
I think at the end of the year, we should compare notes to say, you promised us this. What's the status of this? So at least watu wajue, by the way, watu watudanganya, wanatubeba vibaya.
All right,
it's about time watu waseme, by the way,
I think I'm concluding that politicians have juju that they use. Honestly.
Absolutely.
Because which politician can you give me that has given promises and has kept them?
They're meant to keep. Hello, who are we speaking to?
You're speaking to Emmanuel Oyan from Isiolo.
Emmanuel, good morning.
Good morning too. So I'm actually looking at the what we call the Big Four agenda. But actually, the president does not support these things because one thing, food security is in a bad state now in Kenya.
It's true.
Until now, we are in the 22nd century, not even 21st century. People are dying of hunger, yeah, and floods are carrying people everywhere, yeah. Now, if the infrastructure would have been in a better state, food will be transported to each and every county, each and every ward. Now, this political thing make also the Punguza Mizigo to fail.
Yeah.
Sababu walijua ya kwamba punguza mizigo iliguzia masuala nyeti ambayo president na the right honorable Raila Odinga hawakukuwa wanataka. They wanted BBI to pass, so they corrupt the MCS and the MP so that they can fail the bill.
Okay,
that's all. But the bill from punguza mizigo ili support the common mwananchi. Yeah. The common mwananchi ndo alikuwa na benefit. So from this perspective, in Africa, not even Kenya, hakuna siku mwananchi ataipata uhuru wake. We are still in colonization.
All right.
Bado wazito tu ndo wanatumeza.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you, Emmanuel. Oh, Emmanuel has a lot to say, man.
My point is mzito.
I can tell you, look, if you're a Kenyan right now and you're watching this and you don't, uliona tu punguza mzigo ikikupita hivi, ukasema, our leaders got us. We've raised this point. How is it possible? For me, I was thinking about this when we were doing research for this show, and I was like, punguza mzigo seems to have
solutions.
It has solutions. I think this is what every Kenyan is saying. Reduce the budget. We're spending too much. We're not getting money back. We're not creating industries that are,
generating cash.
Creating cash, generating cash.
And jobs.
So we need to reduce how much we're spending. I think anyone will tell you when you're not making as much money, that's the time you reduce your expenditure. So we already see that, and we put leaders there, and we're saying this one is supposed to be, discussing this for me, but he's not doing that, or she's not doing that. So how, us as Mwananchi, what can we do?
But I think even with Punguza Mzigo, it started with uko juu, because alisema he wants to introduce a 7-year term presidency. So even if I was the president, ngeenda kuambia wase kila mtu uko chini, wewe by the way kanyage hiyo story. Yeah, because imagine you get in 10 years, then say reduce it to 7 years. Mimi naambia kanyageni hii story.
All right, let's talk to the next caller. Hello.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning from Mathare, Stephen.
Hi, Stephen. Good morning. So what do you want to address this morning with the president?
I wanted just him to confirm the notes of his first term and second term. The first term, he had a lot of friends. Then he did not work anything. Even if the opposition was checking on him every time, he didn't work on it. He just ignored the opposition when they raised about even NYS. So, first term, alifanya 0. Second term, amepata opposition inamsupport, lakini bado upande wa corruption shida, haizi support chochote upande wa corruption. Kila wakati wanashika mtu wanamwachilia. So angecheck upande wa corruption, Kenya we have everything.
All right, thank you, Stephen. Is it true to say that if what Stephen has said, if the president actually dealt with corruption, then that would be a legacy?
It would be a legacy.
Would anybody be even bothering with Big Four?
No. In fact, all those things would sort themselves out, because the issues that bedevil us as a country are all to do with resources, which is why our borrowing right now is literally completely out of order. And we've even been warned by World Bank that if we continue our insatiable appetite for borrowing, we cannot maintain it. Because we're not creating. We are consuming economy as opposed to producing. So we import even things, toothpicks. We import toothpicks. As in,
you know what's crazy? This is how I break it down. When you're, for example, if you decide right now to go and get a loan, like you're doing a business or, you're running your life, and then you realize you need to pump in some new capital. So you have to start asking yourself questions. Even as you're going to the bank, they'll ask you, what do you need this money for? And then you say, I want to pump in this money to this business. Then they'll tell you, bring your business plan. Why? Because they won't put money in something that's not sustainable.
Right.
Now, here we have a situation where pumping in money in a situation of mad corruption. You understand? So even as you're borrowing this 10 billion, 5 of it will be stolen. You understand? And that's, or maybe as you're borrowing it, you're putting it in something that's not directly affected in
what you're borrowing.
It's like you're taking it to pay school fees.
But the mistake we might be making, Kwambox, is that we are assuming at the point where we are borrowing that money, we're actually borrowing to put it into what it's supposed to be.
Yes.
But the thing might be the politicians, as they're borrowing, they know, signal at 10 billion, 7 out of that 10 will disappear somewhere into cars that cost 87 million.
I don't know, man.
Look
Some
at
tenders.
Look at a county like Narok, whereby kulikuwa na histories of flooding happening. They went and built all these gabions and routes for water to pass, but they spent 200 million. Na saizi, jana in the news, 2 boys were swept away with water.
Wow.
Imagine.
All right, we're 18 minutes to 8 a.m. Good morning.
Good morning.
Who are we speaking to?
You're speaking to Eric Odongo.
Okay.
I'm calling you from Karen. And I think my take on this is, as Kenyans, we vote for leaders. We don't vote. We vote for leaders. We don't vote for ideas that they have. Yeah, so I think that is my take.
Okay.
We just vote for our leaders. So, for example, if I'm a Luo, I vote for Raila. If I'm a Kikuyu, I vote for Uhuru Kenyatta. But not their ideas.
And how's that helped us, Eric? How has that helped us so far?
It doesn't help us.
All right.
It doesn't help us. I think we should vote for ideas, like for you. If you have a good ideas, I'll vote for you.
All right. Thank you so much, Eric.
I think that's my take. Thank you.
All right. Eric there says we vote.
In fact, not even voting for individuals. We vote for tribes. That's actually what he's saying.
And you know what's interesting? As we're speaking to us Kenyans right now, right? Me, for example, like South B. When election was happening, I was staying in South B. And I'll be honest, I didn't vote. Because there's not a single person who was giving me solutions, because why should I go and panga line and put somewhere there because they're the only ones that are there. There was no actual leader that was saying, look, in South B, we'll make it because it's a space there.
Yeah.
You're coming into a constituency. Why should I have to then move from, like, say, Kitengela to come and work in Nairobi? Do you understand what I mean?
Doesn't make sense.
If you're going to come there as an MP, then create opportunities for business that even my company can open a branch there, so that I can work there. So that I don't have to deal with this traffic maneno. So for me, that's what I was looking for. Who's going to give me solutions? Will water be affordable? Will we be able to get electricity more
Absolutely.
affordable?
Unfortunately, our politics are not idea-based. They're not ideology-based. I mean, let's take an example of Starehe constituency, for example.
Yeah.
We had Boniface Mwangi, who has literally stood and put his neck on the line, literally, for the sake of public funds and all that. He even crowdfunded for his own campaign. What did we do? We put Jaguar. Why? Well, because he's a good musician. So what do we expect? Let's just expect
he was in the right party.
Yeah, he was in the right party and sings, Kigeugeu very well.
But he cried.
So my point here is the fact that as Kenyans, we vote the bad leaders in, then we complain.
All right. Let's go to the phone lines because we've had 15 minutes left. Hello. Hello. All right. Call us up 0719012700. Hello.
Good morning. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Who are we speaking to?
My name is Rafael. I'm calling from Machakos. I would like to contribute to this show.
All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Hello.
No, there's a show. Hello.
Yes. Talk to us.
Yeah, I'm talking of the KTN show on.
All right, you're watching the TV, Raphael. Hello, good morning. All right, when you call, remember to call kwa simu, not kwa TV. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, who are we speaking to?
You're speaking to Anne.
Anne, I need you to reduce the volume on your TV, tafadhali.
Okay.
All right, talk to us.
Now, I'm calling from Malindi.
Yes.
And I wish this message to reach the president, to reach Mr. Masiangi, to reach the DPP, and to reach the DCI. Mr. President alitu promise kuwa sisi tutapata employment katika Big Four agenda. Na whatever is happening in Malindi, unfortunately, is not employment. Isipokuwa ni watu, they are suffering.
Yeah.
Hotels are closing down. Hakuna biashara zenye zinafanyika. Na on top of it, hakuna hata ofisi moja ya serikali inachunguza what is going down here. Hawa Wataliani wenye wanafungua hizi mahoteli wakifunga, they don't pay the workers. We have been working for years and years and years. Na hatupatui pesa zetu. We've been knocking in all government offices and we don't get any response. They don't go down waangalie ni nini yenye inafanyika hapa chini. Wataliani wanauza properties instead of kulipa wafanyikazi, hakuna wafanyikazi wanalipwa.
Ni kweli.
Na wana collude na hawa lawyers wenye wako hapa ndani chini. Watu wanakufa na pesa zao kabla hawajalipwa.
Wow.
We want this one to go down. They have to investigate the case of Coral Key Beach Resort. People have worked there for more than 20 years. They were never paid their dues. Na still kuna watu wenye wana own houses pale, and the remaining properties za yule mwenye ambaye alikuwa yuko na hizo mahoteli zinauzwa na wazungu wanajilipa. Sisi hatukatai wao kuenjoy the beach. They can enjoy as much as they want, but they have to sell the properties first to pay the workers.
Okay. All right.
The labor office yenye iko hapa, they don't go down to check ni nini yenye na happen on the ground. Wakati mahoteli zikifungwa hawachunguzi ni nini na happen. Union tunataka hata huyo atuoli ajue hiyo union yake yenye iko Malindi hapa, they are not doing anything. We've been contributing month in month out for all those years na cases zetu zinaenda flat.
All right, thank you so much, Anne.
We are tired with them and they have to wake up. We want our money.
All right.
Kitu lazima Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta, the president, DPP, DCI, they have to investigate what is going down here.
All right.
We are tired. We want our money like today. We are suffering. Watoto hawasomi. Some people wame paralyzed, wako mahospitali, hawana vile ambavyo wanasaidika. And the government offices are just like this. Na hata union tumewalipa pesa zetu nyingi sana.
All right, thank you so much, Anne.
With the hotels, they don't take our money to the retirement benefit schemes.
Okay, that was Anne from Malindi.
She is annoyed.
This
She
isn't
is
the first time
lighting.
I've heard this story, actually.
Yeah.
It isn't the first time I've heard this particular story. If you go to Malindi right now is like a ghost town. The business.
No, it's at a standstill. I remember going to some hotel not too long ago, and we were like 8 people.
Yeah.
And this is a huge hotel. And if you imagine that they still have to do their running costs, they still have to run lights, put on the pool, all those things that they have to do. Their running costs still run, and then you're about 8 people. So it's doing badly. But this would probably fall under manufacturing. And maybe the question we should be asking, as I see time is also moving, out of the big 4, which is really brilliant ideas, which Kenyans are good at, ideas that are on paper but never get actualized. The question is, which out of the big 4 is actually getting traction? Which of it is actually, can we see some light at the end of the tunnel? Food security, UHC, affordable housing, ni gani unaona ati iko na kamwangaza tu kidogo?
Wacha nikuoneshe kulikuwa na kamwangaza in the name of NHIF. Unakumbuka hiyo story?
Lakini ni billions ngapi sasa zimeenda?
Mimi nilikwambia NHIF mpaka hata niliweka wazazi hapo, nikaweka ma relatives hapo ndani, and then NHIF comes and tells guys that it's only civil servants that, and so the ones who have been paying for this NHIF, what are they supposed to do?
And then there's also billions missing.
Then there's billions missing. They said that when you were remitting your fund, you had been paying to the wrong till number. I've never heard of anything like that. This is Kenya, you guys.
You can just do a reversal and move the cash to the correct.
I know, man. Hello. All right, remember, we're just picking a few phone calls. You can address the president right here on what we call Dear Mr. President. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, who are we speaking to?
You are speaking to Dr. Tieno, a.k.a. Senator.
Yes.
Me, I'm talking on a different, whatever, perspective, yeah?
Okay.
Can you reconfirm to us that President Moi passed out last night and the country is they're not being told?
Well, sir,
I'm getting inside. President Daniel Arap Moi was hospitalized and that he passed out last night.
As far as we know, sir, that he's still alive. The family has confirmed that he is well.
Yeah.
So that is right now.
These are just rumor mongering.
Correct.
We cannot speak on that because we don't know. But what we know in the newspaper, it says that he's currently conscious and that,
very well.
Well.
So no panic.
I just got that information. I wanted to verify. He's one of my heroes. That's
all right.
Okay.
Dr. Otieno there with gossip. Hello, good morning.
Morning to you.
How you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
Mwenzetu nani?
Mimi to Mike Onjero from Nairobi.
Okay.
Yes.
Changia, unataka kumwambia president nini leo?
Mimi sitaki kumwambia president anything. I want to tell the Kenyans.
Yes.
Shambukiambia president hasikii. He's had so much, and if he hears and acts on it, then we should have seen the results. First of all, president atuambia hizi corruption amekuwa akiarrest watu right, left and center. Saturdays and Fridays and whatever. Ziko results ziko wapi? Nani amechajiwa? Nani amefungwa? Nani ameachiwa? Kimwael, sijui youth service, sijui wapi, sijui kina marani za SGR. That's one. Secondary, Kenyans mpaka watoke kwa kikapu ya kusema tuandikwe. Kenyans tumejifanya a nation of consumers. What day are we going to produce anything that can be consumed by somebody else?
Okay. Thank you so much. That's Mike Njiru there. And he raises some interesting points.
Absolutely. And allow me to read a quote that has been sent by the woman representative for Laikipia. That's Kate Warogoro. She says that Kenyans are to blame for bad governance. They are ready to bribe and compromise any institution. Tribalist idiocy. Hey! Kizungungu.
Idiocy.
Idiocy. Yeah, that one.
And see, what he's raised is very important. We see people, so, okay, the journalists, the news breaks the news, breaking news. Something has been stolen. I feel like Kenyans have become numb to this. Why? Because, dear Mr. President, we have not seen the results of these cases that are being tried. Who's been tried? No. Who's actually
they have
actually
been taken
arrested?
to court, but they're still scot-free. And we're not just talking about corruption. Our justice system right now is in shambles. Even people who have been accused of murder are scot-free. Yet we have people 6 feet under.
Because there's, interestingly, I was reading about this case of why is it that corrupt cases or people who are caught in doing criminal are actually managed to stay out of prison because of a loophole in the judiciary, which you can just keep going to appeal and appeal and appeal, so you can lengthen the time of your case. So a case like, for example, Goldenberg, was anyone ever arrested? That's the Kenya that we live in. As we pick our final phone calls, hello, Murgo from Kericho, good morning.
Hello.
Habari ya leo?
Salama kabisa ndugu.
Haya.
Murgo. Let me contribute.
Yes.
Yes, dear Mr. President.
Yes.
I applaud your way of fighting corruption. You leave a good legacy if you pursue that fight. But I'm concerned, Mr. President, that those who have been involved in corruption are told to step aside, and then they are bailed out. They are taken to court. They are bailed out, and that is the end of the story. Mr. President, is that not another case of corruption? Fight corruption to the bitter end. Yes. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. So like I said, this is going to be one of those conversations that will need a whole hour of why there are no people who have been arrested. I read an article, I think it was in the Standard, and basically that's it. It's not that... And this is what Punguza Mzigo was saying. They would change the constitution and make sure that when it comes to corruption cases, 30 days. But what we have is a loophole where you can just keep going to extend,
the constitution
case
allows you, your constitutional right to be out on bail, which is what they're taking advantage of.
Yes.
And the irony of it is that those, especially who are caught with corruption, may have stolen a lot of money, so they can afford it. Even, give them 5 million bail,
big pocket
change.
I feel it should not change. It should not stop with them being arrested tu hivyo. Hata zile pesa waliiba zirudishwe. Na zikirudishwa tunasema, unaona hii pesa umse aliiba, ndio hii inajenga SGR inaendelea. So you know that proceed is being invested to something. Si ati unajua tu koti imesema itarudishwa, but we need to know hii pesa mtu aliiba hapa Kiambu ama hii county imerudi iko hapa ndio inafanya kazi.
Those who actually say that what we need is a benevolent dictator, and what a benevolent dictator would do, constitution sijui law nini, anasema hapana, hiyo kujua kama umeshikwa kaa ndani, sitaki kujua.
But it's interesting, in Kiambu, the governor, the embattled governor Baba Yao, actually I think it was last week in the newspaper, he was like, dear Mr. President,
nilishikwa
hizo pesa zenye zimeibiwa, wacha tu nizirudishe nirudi kwa kazi. As in, that's when that's where we've reached.
How bad it is.
That's how bad it is. Thank you guys so much. We've had a great conversation. Imagine. It flies, yeah? And to all the Kenyans who are still calling, we see that this is definitely a conversation that is needed. Remember, this happens every Wednesday from 7 to 8 a.m. When we do Convergence right here at Standard Media Group, Vibes Radio, and KTN News.
Absolutely.
We'll see you again, Michael.
Yes, thank you very much. You guys always throw me out of the studio just when I'm getting warmed up, but it's all right. Next Wednesday, I'm going to be here, man.
All right. Right now, though, tell them about the Telkom bundles.
And for stuff.
This is KTN News.
Kenya kumepambazuka. Tunawaletea gazeti la kila wiki, Pambazuko, kwa ufahamu halisi wa lugha ya Kiswahili na mchaka wa habari za mashinani kote Kenya. Usikose kujichukulia nakala yako ya Pambazuko kila wiki. Pambazuko, gazeti lako rasmi.
Next week in the Bake Off tent, it's all about desserts.
I'm definitely out of my comfort zone.
This craziness, I tell you.
A lot of pressure.
Don't miss the action as bakers build colorful sweet treats on one hand as chocolate dreams collapse on the other.
No, no, no.
Cook, please cook.
Pray to the baking gods.
I'm really enjoying your trifle.
It's just a really well executed trifle.
Watch all the drama next week on the Great Kenyan Bake Off. Brought to you by Unga Limited, inspiring a nation to bake.
Are spellers from across 40 counties who have come out top as champions within their own counties to come here at the Nationals to battle it out for the ultimate prize of £500,000 shillings and a 26-seater school bus.
ELZSUTHUDDLE. Given it a good try, but you missed it, don't worry.
This is the Kenya Nationals Spelling Bee Championships. Let's play.
Kaskazini, kusini, mashariki na hata magharibi. Wanahabari wetu mtazamaji wanakita kambi katika maeneo mbalimbali ya taifa hili kukung'amulia wewe yale ambayo yanaibuka kila saa na kila dakika.
Mimi kama Tobias Chanje nikiwa katika kaunti ya Mombasa, ni jukumu langu kuwaletea habari za mazingira, makazi na shule wanazofanya wakazi wa eneo hili.
Eneo la North Rift linajulikaniwa kuwa na mabwawa mengi ambayo serikali iliweka mikakati kabambe ya kubadili mustakabali wa wakazi. Kwenye leo mashinani tutakuwa tunaangazia haya na mengi. Kutoka kwangu Elvis Kosgei, kutoka eneo la Kimwarer, kaunti ya Elgeyo Marakwet.
Kikosi kizima cha KTN News tunatamba na kutambariza. Wajibu wetu katika kaunti ya Nakuru ni kuhakikisha hilo linanakiliwa.
Jinsi wapishi wanavyotilia maanani maandalizi ya chakula. Hapa katika leo mashinani tunatilia maanani kukuandalia na kukupakulia taarifa kutoka pembe zote nchini.
Mie ni Nicholas Sombua.
Jina langu Lofty Matambo.
Kiletwa kwako nami mtangazaji wako Cecilia Wakesho Madhuva.
Kwenye taarifa kuntu,
tujuzane, tuelimishane na tujue ni wapi kama taifa tulipo na hatua za kusonga mbele.
This is KTN News.
Welcome back. This being a Wednesday, we always look at your health, where we try and look at diseases and conditions that many of us in society suffer or might be vulnerable to, and find ways to have conversations that could help us better take care of ourselves to prevent or rather also manage when we have said conditions. Now, today we are focusing on diabetes management. Now, there are different types of diabetes, and I'm just going to get you through those before we get into the discussion that we have today. We have type 2 diabetes is a chronic condition that affects the way the body processes blood sugar, and that is glucose. Then we have type 1 diabetes, a chronic condition in which the pancreas produces little or no insulin. And then there's the condition where that is known as being pre-diabetic, and this is a condition which blood sugar is high but not high enough to be categorized as type 2 diabetes. And then we have gestational diabetes, and this is a form of high blood sugar affecting pregnant women. Now, a lot of people have been diagnosed with this in our communities, many of them older in age. Some of them in today's society are diagnosed at very young ages, and therefore there is a need to figure out how to manage diabetes. And joining the conversation today is Dr. Daniel Katambo. Welcome to the conversation, as well as Daniel Maina, who has suffered from this condition and has been under special treatment to manage the condition. Now, I'll start with you, Daktari. Could you tell us about your studies in diabetes and what you have discovered in you said you have been to Bermuda where you received special training on management of diabetes.
Yes. First of all, thank you for the invite.
Yes.
So as you correctly put it, there are several types of diabetes, and the commonest type of diabetes is actually type 2 diabetes,
Type 2, yes.
which is really associated with the lifestyle. And I think it's good to be clear that in this session we'll actually be focusing more on type 2 diabetes.
Right.
For the last couple of years, yes, I have been in Bermuda, and while I was there, the preference or the numbers of type 2 diabetes, as we may predict, were quite staggering high, almost 13%. And the population is quite small, it's somewhere close to 64,000 people. And one of the things that we realized while we were there is that they are so well advanced in technology and medications, and yet they are still experiencing lots of type 2 diabetes. And one of the things that we know right now is that over the last almost 10 years, the kind of management that we are now offering type 2 diabetes is kind of like changing a bit. And this includes not only did we know that lifestyle actually can change your life completely.
It can cause it, but it can also change.
Can actually be used to, on the other side, to actually put yourself into remission or even reversal. So what we did in the Bermuda, we come up with a program based on very scientific studies that are coming up in the last 10 years. And we put patients on the study, and we actually were able to put couple of patients into remission. And
so before you get into the actual program itself, I'd like you to draw comparison between the Bermuda society and their lifestyle and the Kenyan society. What did you observe that we could share that would mean that maybe this study that was done there could actually apply to people here in the country?
One of the things that you want to notice, especially in a first world country like Bermuda, is that there's a lot of, the lifestyle, as they put it out there, is just things like, what basically you kind of like feed
put into
or
your body.
Put into your body, and also the things that you want to call like urbanization.
Yes.
Just to make it very short, if you turn the flip and then you come to a place like Kenya and you look at a place like Nairobi, you kind of like want to compare the same situations.
Yes.
And then you would wonder why is it that in Bermuda it's higher than in Kenya.
A developing country.
Yes, and in a third world country like Kenya. And you will notice maybe it's the first time we want to define what is unhealthy or unhealthy lifestyle when it comes to a Kenyan environment. Yes.
So go ahead, define what is it about us that is making us vulnerable, because they're the things that the people in Bermuda make the people in Bermuda vulnerable. But in the Kenyan society, I'm sure you have noticed some of the things that we do that make us vulnerable to diabetes.
One of the key things that you want to notice is that, first of all, you just want to draw back yourself and ask yourself, what really causes type 2 diabetes?
Yes.
And what now we've come to really understand is that it's a disease of insulin, and your insulin becomes resistant. That means that your cells are not able to kind of like take in the glucose that you give in. So the question is then, where do you get the glucose from? And so depending on which country you are in, if you're in first world country, then most of them depend on fast foods.
Fast foods and
but
drinks.
Now you come to a place like our country in Kenya, the question is, where do we get those foods that cause us to have high blood sugar?
Yes.
And you will be amazed to learn that some of these foods just include something like ugali, chapati, ndoma, the cassava, uji ya wimbi, uji ya mahindi.
Even
so,
the wow, and these are typically things that you would think the uji ya wimbi na ugali ya wimbi are the things you'd give to a diabetic person to tell them this is the healthier option to the white stuff, right?
Yes.
That comes out of the white wheat.
Yes.
So I'll pause it there and get to you, Mr. Daniel Maina. You were diagnosed with diabetes. Could you tell us how you came about, the symptoms you experienced, and how you came about seeking treatment in the initial stages of your illness?
Thank you for inviting me here. First, I was diagnosed with blood sugar in 1999.
99?
Yeah.
Wow.
But then I started feeling fuzzy, very tired. I started drinking a lot of water. And then I thought it is normal to drink water, a lot of water, because doctors normally say that to drink a lot of water.
Yeah. So if you're doing it, you feel like, I'm healthy.
Yeah. Little did I know that I was suffering from diabetes. And then I went for treatment, and I've been on drugs.
So at what point did you decide, what were you feeling when you decided this must be something more than
it's
just...
my brother, because my brother had diabetes before I did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he had the same symptoms that I had. So he told me, what you are doing, the kind of what you are drinking and going to loo every time, that you should be checked for diabetes. Then that's when I went to the hospital.
Yes.
And I discovered that I had diabetes. Yes.
So they put you, at what stage was your diabetes? Was it severe, or was it something that you could manage? What did the doctor tell you?
Okay, the initial stage of my diabetes, it was slow.
Yeah.
It had not stayed for a long time. Although my blood sugar was high, when I was tested, it was coming to 20 units, 20. And by then, I didn't know how to measure, or what is what,
blood sugar.
how it is measured, the highest peak or on the lower peak. So I was put on medication. Yeah, I started taking tablets for about 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And so you have been on medication. I'd like to throw it back to you, Dr. Katambo, because he says his brother has it. And while we're talking about lifestyle, it's important to note that there's some people who are predisposed by virtue of it being in their family. It's a genetic predisposition to diabetes. So it means the likelihood of them having it is higher. But then you have this study that you have conducted, and you've tried it on patients that seems to be helping people manage diabetes in ways that are not conventional, or ways that are more different from what we are typically doing here to manage diabetes. So could you tell us more about that, and how the studies, the outcomes of the studies you are doing in Bermuda?
First, a comment on the genetic factors.
Yes.
Yes, it's true. We know that especially type 2 diabetes has some linkage to genetic, association.
Yes.
And therefore, if you are any of your siblings or any of your parents, uncles or auntie has type 2 diabetes, then there is a likelihood that you have a higher probability or higher chance of you developing type 2 diabetes.
Yes.
However, we cannot blame genetics entirely onto the cause of type 2 diabetes.
All right.
Because it's not unheard of for you to have both of your parents having type 2 diabetes and none of the siblings having type 2 diabetes.
Okay.
That said, I think it's just important to.
So you could be genetically predisposed but not have it. Exactly. Is it by virtue of just luck, or is it that you could live a certain lifestyle that could help you not get it?
Let me just say it could be both.
Yeah. Okay.
Luck, and the fact that you also that if you know probably your parents had type 2 diabetes, and then you kind of like put some measures into your preventive measures, then the likelihood of you developing type 2 diabetes is actually it's actually quite minimal.
Okay.
That said, I just wanted to say what you are doing in Bermuda and what I'm doing here in Kenya is not something that really different. We just need to draw back and quite like understand what really causes type 2 diabetes. And as I had said, it's actually high blood sugar in your system, which is as a result of insulin resistance.
Right.
So the question is, what really are the foods that cause the sugar to go up? And therefore, if you dealt with the foods that cause your glucose to go up, then you are higher chances of you getting your type 2 diabetes under control, as opposed to when you don't know. Or as opposed to, I'll give you an example. Many are the times that we are told that starches are the ones that elevate your sugar, right?
Yes.
But we are also told that fats are not good for you. But according to the very recent studies, there are studies that have come up that are really proving to be that fat is not the enemy that we really thought it was to be.
So to make it easier to understand for the people who are watching at home, let's say someone has been diagnosed with diabetes. Let's take your example. You were told perhaps to avoid certain foods. Could you tell us what the doctor advised you in terms of diet? Then we can start from there.
Yeah, he told me to be taking food low in carbohydrates.
Yes.
Substantial amount. But did not tell me how. At the initial stage when I was diagnosed.
Right.
Okay. He told me to be eating a lot of vegetables, cereals. Although I came to discover that also that cereals have a lot of carbohydrates.
Yes.
And most of the people depended on cereals, those who are diagnosed with diabetes. So I came to know that they are not also reducing the sugar. But the sugar is still going up.
Okay.
So,
as you were taking the medication and adhering to this diet, was your condition getting more severe?
Okay, I can say that before, let's say after 10 years of taking medication, the sugar was not even going down.
It was the same issue, despite medication and dietary changes.
But now, you know, when I was diagnosed, I started losing my weight completely. That is because my pancreas was not working.
Okay.
So it was not producing insulin. So the food that I was taking was going to waste. So my body started shrinking down. So when I started taking medication, see now it elevated the pancreas. So my pancreas was producing insulin, and so I started becoming fat again. Because the food is now being digested
the way it should.
But still, I didn't know that I had to reduce the intake of carbohydrates to be as low as possible, so that my pancreas can now start stabilizing.
Because you were not aware that some of the cereals you were taking.
Yeah, so when I started now seeing that my body weight is now increasing, I thought now I'm on the safe side. Because when you see that you are shrinking down, then first of all you are anxious. What will happen next?
What's going on? Now, Dr. Katambo, the typical dietary instructions, could you dig deeper into them and how you would flip them in order to ensure that people are living the best lives and taking the right proportions as opposed to what we typically believe are the good foods for people suffering with diabetes? What's the difference between what your program is offering and what is out there in terms of knowledge and in terms of advice to people like Mr. Minor here?
Yes. So typically, as we know it, as I was alluding to, we just need to realize that carbohydrates are mainly, and I would just want to say in quotes, our enemy. And once you take any form of carbohydrate, then it's converted into glucose, which raises your insulin levels. And this tends to get you prone to, getting almost like, and especially if you are inactive, then you would kind of like be prone to type 2 diabetes. So what was the conventional, and rightfully so, is that before, even when I was school, you were told probably take some form of starches and take them in lesser amounts, and you increase your frequency of taking them. But now what we have seen from studies, especially in the last 10 years, is that maybe we need to draw back and ask ourselves, what's the real cause of type 2 diabetes? And that's the starches or the carbohydrates. What if you minimize the amount that you're taking? Could that help? And the answer is yes. I'll give you a typical example. For example, we are told to take, if you to choose either white bread or brown bread.
Brown bread. You're told brown bread is healthier.
You're told brown bread
anything brown is pegged as
tends
the
to be
option.
healthy.
Yes.
But I think, what if you knew one slice of bread is probably 4 teaspoons of sugar? That's white. And if it's brown, it's 3.5 teaspoons of sugar. Would you still make the same decision? So it's just knowing what you're actually eating, what effect will it have on your sugar?
Right. So are there options we have in our diet as Kenyans? If we are told to have if you're told to put a plate of white ugali versus the brown ugali or the white bread, and if you shift from the white to the brown, whether it's bread, ugali or chapati, are those healthier options? That would be the question.
I wouldn't say they're not healthier options. They're still healthier, but it depends on what you want defined to be healthy, because both of them, either white or brown, both of them are starches.
Yes.
And I'll take you back again. What did we say about what causes type 2 diabetes? It's the starches and the carbohydrate. So all you need to ask yourself, how much of carbohydrate am I taking from either the white or the brown? So the brown could have some fiber, which you might want to classify as
good for digestion.
Good for digestion, and therefore call it healthier option. But to remember, the difference between how much carbohydrate or how much sugar in each is in it is actually very minimal.
Okay. So what more revelations come from your program that you can that lead to what the so-called remission of diabetes?
In realization from research that we actually probably, if we drew back and probably looked at carbohydrates in a very different way, and we said, okay, if we told you probably not to take 3 slices of brown bread, and we told you to just take 1 slice of brown bread, will that help? And the answer is yes. So I think what we draw from either any of the programs is the program is just purely based on a low carbohydrate diet.
Yes.
And that has been shown
whether brown or white, it needs to be very
just
minimal.
base it on a low carbohydrate diet. And this means somewhere to be less than 100 grams of carbohydrates in a day.
Okay.
So all you needed to do now is to take, for example, what I'm doing is to take a sample of patients and then take them through a process where you just teach them, for example, this has this much of sugar, white has this much of sugar, brown has this much of sugar. And now make your decision on how you want that, how do you think that is going to affect your sugars.
Right.
Like for his case, he will tell you when he came, he has almost 20 years of being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes.
Since 1990.
And then it's typical. It's not uncommon to see a patient start with medications, and then 5 to 10 years down the line, they also start on insulin. And then in the process, they continue gaining weight.
So ideally, how should it work?
Ideally, if you get good education, and especially in the new scientific way we are thinking about, and you go and change the way you are taking your carbohydrates, you will actually face, if you are diagnosed with, if you did not take care of the primary prevention and you get type 2 diabetes, and then you take care of the carbohydrates and lower them and take the healthier fats and the healthier proteins, what you discover is that this patient is actually able to reduce medications, avoid complications, and even so go into remission or even reverse their diabetes.
Now, we're talking about getting to that level of reversion. Are you telling me that when he was diagnosed and he was put on the pills, there was a possibility with his diet and all the portions that you're talking about, he could have stuck to that and even gone back to an area, a level where he would have been considered normal without high blood sugar?
Yeah.
All right.
Yes, that's exactly the case. So it means if you're diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, let's say 2 weeks ago or even a year ago, because what we are seeing is if you are less than 8 to 10 years, most likely at this point you haven't started insulin for most people.
Yes.
This is a general statement. However, if you are currently advised and actually taken through a good process and told and given good education, awareness of where your sugars are coming from, and then you change that form of lifestyle, then you're actually seeing patients getting off the medications and actually getting to that state where if I were the one suffering from the diabetes, then if you check my my levels, like things like we check like HbA1cs, fasting blood sugars, they're purely normal.
Okay.
And therefore we call you
Mr. Maina, where are you in terms of your health right now?
It's very good. Because in January or the beginning of this year, when you were introduced to reverse your diabetes program, my sugar was still high up.
Yes. Why had you gotten to a point where you're using insulin now?
I was using insulin until, after 10 years from when I was diagnosed.
Yes.
I started, after taking pills and found that they are not working anymore. The doctor
and you're
told
gaining weight now?
Not even gaining the weight. The sugar was still spiking up. So the doctor told me now I have to start insulin. So I started. For about, let's say about 10 years or less. I've been dependent on insulin. So you can imagine taking every day
it's
2
quite,
injections for about 7 years. That's about 7,000 injections in your body.
Wow,
Now, at the beginning of this year, when we were introduced to this program, we were advised to put down our carbohydrates levels.
Completely?
Not completely, substantially, or put it very low. And I started now minimizing my intake of insulin. From the units I was taking, it went down.
So were you monitoring your blood sugar?
Yeah, we have to monitor. Yes.
So I'm curious about the details of your diet. From, just put it literally, if you're having githeri every day, how did you change? I want to know so that someone who is trying to craft a diet at home can figure out what they can change. Please give us a shift from what you were eating, let's say last year, and how your plate looks like today.
All right.
Yes.
Last year, before we started this program, I could eat 2 chapatis. The chunk of gari was big. I didn't care about even eating 4 slices of bread.
Right.
But I didn't know that I was poisoning myself.
It was the same stuff that was bringing you the
So when we started the program, all those we had to reduce.
So from your breakfast of 4 slices of bread and a cup of tea?
We had to depend on just slight of carbohydrates, and then a bit of proteins and vegetables.
So today, like today morning, your breakfast, what did it look like?
This morning I just drank a cup of tea and some peanuts.
Peanuts, right? Yeah. So that's the difference I want to see. I want to understand.
But before
literally,
I could take a cup of tea or 2 with some slices of bread. If it was chapati, I could eat about 2
chapos. But now if you're to shift your lunch meal, let's say, what you would take as 2 chapos and maybe a stew and whatever, what would you take today?
I would just take some few grains, and maybe I avoid chapatis. I have to put my carbohydrates level as low as possible.
So it's a question of looking for the alternatives and cutting down carbohydrates.
Cutting down completely. Okay, by January, I was weighing about 90 98 kgs. I went on minimizing, going down on my weight, putting down completely. And as I was putting it down, my sugar level started going down
also.
By, let's say about March, April of this year, I gave up the medicine.
So you stopped taking insulin?
Yeah, I'm not taking anything.
But are you monitoring your sugar levels?
Yes, I monitor every day.
Yeah.
You have to monitor before you take your meals and 2 hours
after
you take
so
the
that you
meals.
can monitor the difference.
Yeah. If it goes beyond 2 units, then you have to know that you had.
And then it helps you, informs you on that meal that you had. Then you decide, today then I won't take the 2 chapels, I'll take something different, and then you can shift.
Normally you don't even, the best thing is to take half, half or 1, which is not so big.
Okay. Now, there are people like him who are living like this. They have to take the 2 injections every day. They have to prick themselves every day to figure out. So it's even emotionally, I would imagine, it's quite taxing psychologically to be living 20 years on medication and insulin and monitoring and not knowing that the food you're having is the poison. So could you tell us more about, because we're running out of time, we left with 5 minutes, could you tell us about how the program works and what informs the diet? Because he's given us his own personal account. Now, I would like the scientific angle of it as we wind up the discussion.
So the program is actually, maybe I should take time to mention that it's always good before you start any form of diet to always seek medical attention. Because if you go ahead and start cutting your carbohydrate diet right now and you're at home, you're on insulin, then I'm afraid you might go into lower levels, and that might be quite a disaster.
Yeah, and that's why he came to you and your program to,
Yes. So on to your point, on the program is actually based on a low-carb diet, which is very scientific currently, and we know it's the most current form with the best science right now in the market in terms of diabetes remission and reversal. So how we did was to come up and kind of like an education thing, running from the time we see you, and then we see how willing are you to kind of like make changes. Because there are people, honestly, they are not probably...
Yeah, because if you tell me to stop taking the insulin, my life, I've been told my life depends on the insulin, it's a bit, you would understand when someone is a bit,
Exactly. And that's what we want just to allay. We see you first, we talk to you, we check onto your diet, and then we tell you, would you be willing to kind of like make some difference from your meals, from what you are doing and what you're doing now. And then we could tell you, yeah, we've seen if we do this, actually you might come off some medication and actually avoid the injections, avoid the medications, and eventually get into remission, and therefore no more expenses with your medications, something like that. So we always have to sit with you first. And then we take you through a 6-week program that we take you with different... every week we have different themes, and then we follow you up for every other month to see how you're doing.
And he has mentioned that he also lost weight, which is a healthier outcome for the program.
One of the things that you want to know about type 2 diabetes is that it is actually correlated very well with obesity. Obesity tends to lead to type 2 diabetes. So any form of weight loss will actually tend to reverse your type 2 diabetes. So scientifically speaking, if you lose 10 to 15% of your body weight, then you're walking towards the right direction.
All right, and on that note, we'd like to wind up your health. This has been Dr. Daniel Katambo, as well as Daniel Maina, who has managed to reverse his condition and reduce the amount of insulin. But before you engage in any of the options that have been mentioned on today's show, make sure to seek the advice of a medical doctor, or you can find Dr. Katambo, I believe, on social media. You are Daniel Katambo, DK Katambo on social media, and get to him and find out if you have options that you can explore and perhaps find better health as Mr. Maina has. But we're going to wind up your health right now. We take a short break. When we come back, we'll have international news for you.